1 week season.
Guys, today, after examining all the options, StatATL has his sights set on a Trevor Lawrence build, but still a lot of ways you could go this weekend. So we're going to explore all of that coming up today in the DFS Lab, guys. You know the drill, presented by 1 week season. He is StatATL. I am Cheeseman, your host, and we are looking at week 14. Guys, if you could drop a like, subscribe to the channel below, we would love that. And with that, Stat, how are you doing, man? How was week 13? It was an ugly slate, but I know, man, you were texting a little earlier. You had a pretty good weekend there.
Yeah, week 13 was good. I know we kind of did a recap on Friday of like Thanksgiving slate. I ended up playing lighter on Sunday. Just didn't feel like I had as much time to research, and so I did less lineups than usual. Really condensed the player pool. Like I went like 100% Kamali Vidal. I went 100% Seattle D. I basically did all.
Yeah, there you go.
I did all Matt Stafford double stacks. Not that those ended up being the nuts, but they didn't end up killing you. And yeah, I mean, I think I entered 7 rosters. I cashed 6 of them. From an ROI percentage, it was one of my best weeks of the season. But in terms of actual dollars, was still solid. But yeah, I think I had like a plus 400% ROI on, a couple $100. So not complaining. It was a good week. It was one of those weeks where after the fact, looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have just played a little bit more with the same conviction that we had. So.
Right. Well, I'll tell you how my weekend went. To start with, I had 100% Seahawks defense.
Nice.
I also had a 100% Cam Ward. So I did not play many lineups. And so I did not cash any of them. But I did. The Seattle D was great, but it didn't help me. So I was like, man, maybe I kept thinking, like, as they kept racking up sacks, I was like, maybe can sneak me over the cash line. And it just did not. So that's okay. We looking ahead to week 14. Nice work, though, man. Yeah, our build last week, I was looking at it this morning, was like, it's a pretty solid build. It had Bijan in the one that we did on the show. It had Bijan. It had Seahawks D. It also had Devontae Adams. It did have Cam Ward, but it would have cashed. It would have been top 500 in most single entries, or top 500, I should say, like top 5% or something like that. So, okay, looking ahead to week 14, let me open up DraftKings here, and I'm going to just kind of give a quick spot, and then I'll jump into a build as you kind of give kind of your overview. But I mean, obviously there's some different spots you could go. You have already done your first look, so you kind of have looked and highlighted some spots. One game I like is this Cincinnati Buffalo game, and I think most of the field will like it. But with all the pay up options, I do wonder how many people will prioritize a pay-up quarterback like Josh Allen when it's like there's other, top-end plays at running back or receiver that you want to play, and you also have these value tier quarterbacks like a Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor also is a good option, but you kind of see this opportunity, especially with Allen, like, okay, maybe Josh Allen will just have kind of one of his mediocre games. And so playing into some of that, saying, okay, Bills and, the Bills are in a spot where they need to fight for playoff positioning still. They're in a decent spot. Cincinnati also just got Joe Burrow back. So I just feel like with the added element of the explosiveness that their offense has with Burrow, you could, I would love to see some early offense. Maybe you have a kickoff return or a couple early touchdowns by the Bengals, and it unleashes that version of Josh Allen that can get 40 plus, 45 plus fantasy points that could make all the difference. So I think that's one spot that I just love, trying to find these spots for Josh Allen that are few and far between, but when he hits his ceiling, the ceiling is really nice. So that's a spot that I like. What about you as I get into our lineup here, or our contest?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of good game environments, that we kind of, you hit on some, obviously, like, I think Josh Allen is interesting this week. I think Lamar hasn't been great this season, but he's in a really plus matchup. But I think from like an overall kind of like state of the slate and kind of doing my first look, what I realized is I really like a lot of the pay up running backs this week. And I feel like there's not a whole lot of like value running backs outside of like maybe Devin Neal if Kamara misses again. But even that's not really super strong. I think maybe Jordan Mason could be interesting. If you get injury news there where he's kind of the lead back out of that backfield. But I think in general, like right now, there's not a whole lot of value at running back, which kind of has me personally gravitating towards more pay down options at quarterback. I do really like, I think you teased it in our intro here. I do really like leaning into Trevor Lawrence, playing the Colts, like building around that game, I think is really intriguing. I think you can go back to Tyrod Taylor. I think that's a really straightforward environment there. He uses his legs. He's got, obvious pass catchers that you can pair him with. I like Shock too with, Olave, with Jawan Johnson, with Vele. I think there's a lot of good stacking partners and options to kind of go down low, at quarterback that gives you a lot of flexibility to kind of pay up at running back, which is where I think I'm going to end up doing a lot this week, even though it's still early in the week.
Yeah, man. And guys, like, make sure to check out StatATL's first look. I don't know if you're doing a video. Are you doing a video this week?
I'm traveling for work, as you know. I'm in Chicago today, so I don't know that I'm gonna have the bandwidth for that this week. But
yeah,
it's out on Discord. It's out on Twitter X already. Just over at 1 Week Season Twitter account, or it's pinned in the Discord in the Inner Circle channel every week.
That's like my flowchart, man. Like, start with StatATL's first look. Gives you this great overview of where people have been performing, what teams have been giving up big games. And I think it's just a great starting point. And, if you don't have much time to research, could be a great ending point too. If it's just like, oh, Sunday morning, where do I go? Like, good spot to go. So, okay. So with that, where do you want to start this build?
Well, you teased it with Trevor Lawrence. So let's lean into Jacksonville here. And I really want to go with a double stack out of Jacksonville. So let's start with Trevor Lawrence up top. And then I think what I really like this week is I think Parker Washington is likely to miss this week, which will help consolidate that passing offense a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting is in the 4 games that Jacoby Myers has come over via trade to Jacksonville, he has led the team in kind of first look targets from Trevor Lawrence in 3 out of the 4 games, including last week where Brian Thomas Jr. was back on the field. So I think that's a really intriguing way to lean into this game. I don't know how popular Jacoby Myers is going to be at 5,700, but I want to go Myers here, and then at tight end I want to kind of double tap here and go Brenton Strange as well down at 3,900.
Yeah, Myers has been great in Jacksonville. I think that it feels like he has ceiling to really go even bigger. I guess we'll see. It feels like there's a connection with Lawrence, just the way he's been performing. So I know I like this a lot. And then Brenton Strange, I don't know why, dude. Brenton Strange just always seems to have a pretty solid game. And, if he catches a touchdown or hits the bonus, the ceiling is huge.
Yeah, I mean, this player block I think cost exactly 15,000. And the last 2 games with them being healthy, I mean, Brenton Strange was on IR for a bunch of the season, but came back 2 weeks ago. Like this block has gone for over 50 points like the last 2 weeks. Obviously, like you're hoping for closer to 60 to kind of keep you on that 200-point pace, but I think they went for 50 and 55. So they're giving you a decent floor, and we're playing this for upside. I think that this block has upside for 70, 80 points. So,
and it gives you some. It also gives you some salary flexibility for some pay up running backs, as you had alluded to. Is that where you want to look at next? Is the running back spot?
I think that if we're going to bank on these 3 pieces giving you really strong games, we're basically leaning on Jacksonville to score 4 or 5 touchdowns, most of them coming through the air. or maybe Trevor Lawrence rushing one in. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to assume that Indy's keeping up with them. So I think, to me, it's really interesting. I think that you could set a rule, and we talk about some of this behind the paywall a lot, but I think you could easily set a rule for one Colt pass catcher between Pittman, Alec Pierce, or Jalen Warren on basically every roster, just because they're all priced in the low 5Ks. They have, such one of the things that I really like to look at, I think JM is a big proponent of, is the kind of that pre-touchdown scoring. Like, they have been putting up really strong numbers. So if we can get lucky and get the touchdowns out of whoever we decide to pick on this build, I think Jalen Warren or Tyler Warren is probably my favorite, but I don't know that I want to tie up both spots with a tight end right away. So let's go Alec Pierce. I think he's right at 5,100. Let's kind of pencil him in and let that be kind of our build around for this game.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think from here, let's look at the running back position. To me, I think there are three really strong plays kind of paying up at running back. And to me, the first is probably Devon A. Chan. Devon A. Chan, super involved, heavily involved in the pass game as well. In general, I think last week we only saw him get one target, which maybe is a little concerning. But if we look at basically every other game of the season, you're seeing a lot of 5-6. You got some 7-8s earlier in the year. Like, I like what he gives you in terms of floor. I like what he gives you in terms of ceiling. We've seen a 43-point game just 3 weeks ago. So I really like him against the Jets, a team that have traded away a lot of their defensive players since the trade deadline. So I kind of like leaning into Achane here.
Love that.
And then I think you've got a couple of strong options. You could go JT, just around really leaning into that Indy Jacksonville game. Matchup's really tough though on paper. So I think for me here, I really want to lean in to James Cook against Cincinnati. Like, the running backs have just absolutely smashed the Bengals on the ground. And I think this is such a huge game for both of these teams. Like, Buffalo is going to lean into, they've been riding Cook. They're going to lean into him a little bit more. I think in this game, I think this is a heavy James Cook output game. So I really like that.
Yep.
I think if we move over to defense, I mean, I think that there's probably, honestly, I think there's like two smash spots for defense this week. And, we talked about one last week with Seattle, like, hey, this is like such a strong spot for Seattle. To me, this is just such a strong spot for the Cleveland Browns defense. The Titans, I think, are top 2 or 3 in giving up sacks this year. The Browns, I think, are top 2 in, sacks as a team this season. So honestly, like, the stars are kind of aligning here. And then I think the Broncos are a really strong option as well. Taking on the Raiders again. I think it's the Raiders and the Titans that are the two bottom teams in terms of sacks allowed. And then it's like the Browns and the Broncos are the top 2 teams in terms of sacks. So it's just kind of like the stars are lining up for both. So let's go for the Browns here.
Yeah, I like that. And I will just say too, it sometimes, like, defense is obviously defense is super variant, but sometimes a play is just so good, it just makes more sense to play it in terms of this one. Like, I remember a few years back when the Patriots defense was just consistently putting up like 20 points a game, and you want to fade it because it's like, oh, defense is so variant, but they just kept doing it. I'm not. So, I mean, this is, I think, one of those spots where, I even kind of have that gut reaction. Oh, this is such a variant spot. Maybe fade it. But I mean, again, it still has chances to fail. Could Tennessee come out and have their best offensive games of the season? Yes. but the amount of sacks Cam Ward has taken and then the added chances for fumbles or picks at Snow, the total, it's 33. So this seems like a smash spot. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. And then so, for the last two spots in this roster, I kind of want to do something that's it's something that we've done on the show a couple of times and talk about over at 1 Week Season quite a bit. It's honestly, it's something that JM is a big proponent of. I really want to lean into a player block here a little bit with James Cook. There's some crazy, maybe not crazy, but there's some really strong correlation in stats between James Cook and Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid kind of is their wide receiver one when he's healthy. And kind of, if we look back this season at the seven healthy games between Kincaid and James Cook, like they've combined, I think the low is 24, but I think they've played 7 games where they've been healthy, and you've got basically 5 scores in the 30s and 1 or 2 scores, maybe 3. Actually, I think it's 3 scores with 40 plus points between that player block. So, if I'm looking at James Cook at 7,800 and Dalton Kincaid at 4,300, it's like, what is that? Like 13,000, where I'm getting a 3.5x score a lot of the time. Like, I think that's a really sharp way to lean in to some kind of more certainty around points. Like, I feel like it's really unlikely that this block just absolutely crushes your roster. So I really do like that. And then I think we've got 5,300 left in a wide receiver spot. So let's kind of see what that gives us. I think Chris Godwin is interesting here. I wrote up in my first look that his snap percentage went from 33 he missed a whole bunch of games with an injury, came back 2 weeks ago, played 33% of the snaps. Last week, he saw 67% of the offensive snaps, so continuing to ramp up. Again, Tampa Bay right on the cusp of the playoffs. I think they're 1 game ahead of the Panthers, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Godwin continue to get more and more involved. Shakir obviously can't really consider with 2 pieces on Buffalo already. I do really like what we've seen recently out of Terry McLaurin, kind of had his best game of the season. But again, on the road against Minnesota, not really a spot I want to target. You saw what they did to JSN on Sunday. What I do think is a really intriguing spot here is with Christian Watson. I do like this spot for Jordan Love as well. I think this is a sneaky spot for the Green Bay offense. This is a huge game for them against the Bears. What's crazy to me is that the Bears, I think, are 9-3, and they are the number 1 seed right now in the NFC. And then you go look at the 49ers, who are the 7th seed currently in the NFC, and they're 9-4. So like the first seed and the literally the last playoff team all have 9 wins. Like it's craziness, like how strong that is and how much volatility that is. Huge game. So I think here, Christian Watson, kind of the de facto wide receiver 1 for Green Bay with the Tucker Kraft injury. I like the upside that he brings at 5,200. I think, a 15, 20, 25 point game well within the range of outcomes just because of how he's used. I think 2 out of the last 3 weeks you were showing, I think he had 18 points and 21 points. Like he's just kind of the deep threat player generally for this offense. So I know that hasn't been how we've kind of seen him look the last few weeks since kind of coming back from injury, but that's primarily where they like to use him in seasons past. So I like leaning into Watson here. I think this gives us some good potential upside to kind of go along with some of these player blocks and leaning into that Trevor Lawrence double stack. I feel like we're making just a few bets here with the Jacksonville Indy game, and then James Cook and Dalton Kincaid. Where if we can get those spots right, like we've just kind of gotten 6 spots on a 9-player roster correct. I feel good about defense too. So we've answered a lot of questions with just making 2 bets.
Absolutely, dude. Love this build. And again, I do like having a piece of that, two pieces from that Cincinnati Buffalo game. I really like that player block. So, guys, with that wraps up the build. So to run through it for those listening, we StatATL went with primary was that Jacksonville Indy stack. So Trevor Lawrence with Jacoby Myers and Brenton Strange, and the bring back of Alec Pierce. Player block, the Bills player block of Dalton Kincaid and James Cook, and then you also had one-offs of Devon Achane, Christian Watson, and the Browns defense. Stat, great build, man. Absolutely loved it. With that, any final thoughts, man, before we send this one off to week 14?
No, I'm just, as usual, I'm hoping that we see some OWS avatars atop leaderboards. And then for those of you who are interested in it, we will be starting or continuing with some playoff best ball content,
Right.
both over on my personal channel, which is just StatATL on YouTube, as well as on the 1 week season, channel, I believe starting next week. So keep an eye out for that.
Keep an eye on it. Like you heard, both his personal YouTube, StatATL, and the 1 week season site. This guy's like a playoff best ball demigod at the very least. So definitely check out his. You're doing a live draft, man. It's every day. So I'm impressed by the grind. So guys, he's StatATL. I'm Cheeseman. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out oneweekseason.com, and we will catch you guys next week on the DFS Lab. Good luck this week, guys.